Hey, this is Gene. I'm responding to a tweet from AliceTalksFooty. That's her handle, X or Twitter or Twitter. You might hear my son in the background. She's talking to my dogs to get them out. Um, I have no real problem with her. I watch her on TikTok sometimes too. Um, However, she's another one of those young female emotional people that um, isn't really rational with what she has to say. I don't know how old she really is. I think she's in her 20s. It could be younger than that. She could be 18 for all as I know. But she did a long thing here, and I'm going to go through it. Um, some of the what she actually stated is some of that's true. I don't know how that means anything. People have to understand that Manchester United is the most reported on club in the world, and whatever we have will be magnified in the press. You have players that hate us for being Manchester United, that grew up in a time that we dominated everything for nearly 25 years in the Premiership. Even though it's only been 10 years since we won one, it's still, they can't get out of their mouth. They continually have to talk about us all the damn time. Um, it's like if you're in the United States, you would know it'd be like the Yankees or something like that. These teams that are so successful and have such a footprint in the world is going to it's going to have more reporting on it. So I have no issue with her specifically, but this is how things are right now. They just put it out there, and apparently I don't know what she's trying to get from it, saying that yeah, the club is dead because of all these issues. Um, I can I can talk to all of these. I can give you my reasons why this says it, but we don't know what goes on in other clubs around the world because what sells the papers is Manchester United stuff. If it was somebody on Brighton, nobody would care, but Manchester United has to because it sells everything, and we have to deal with that, and that's because we've been successful. Liverpool had that for a long time too, but they didn't have social media when they were so successful. So they didn't have to deal with this. They had players in that team that clearly were accused of certain things that happened to their club. The fact that they were in the wilderness for 20 years, and but they never took about as much as we take. So I'm going to go through this real quick as much as I can. There's a lot here. It's late in the day for me, and at the end of the day, my brain kind of shuts down. That's just how it happens with my stroke and the reactions after that. So we'll see how it works, and we'll go from that. The first one on our list to start off, it basically said this has all happened in the last 3 years. Okay, everything that's ever been reported on that ever happened to Manchester United will be reported. So it's going to be in the press, and we have so many fan channels or people that support Manchester United, and they always have their opinions. And most of the time, they just blame the Glazers, regardless of whatever happens. Guy actually responded to her in a tweet and said all these things. I think 17 things, 16%, 16 of them don't even mention the Glazers. And they always want to say it's the Glazers' fault for all of this. Like the Glazers know what these people are doing on their off time. Anyway, let's go through this. First one. Now, three women now accuse Anthony of assault, and one set to do a TV interview about it. Who cares? They're just allegations. They're claims. This happens whenever there's something that happens like this, and everybody comes out. Maybe you people overseas didn't know what happened to one of our nominees to be in the Supreme Court. This woman came in there, said this stuff about him, was all factually wrong, and then all these other women came out of the woodwork, said that he did the similar things, and they easily could disprove all the other stuff that happened, that it did not happen. Still, the women's groups in this country still thinking that this guy, this now Supreme Court justice is a rapist. For basically, we don't even know what actually happened, but they were both teenagers, and he possibly grabbed her boob in a party in the 80s. Now, I did a whole video about that, about how things were back then, but there's no witnesses that said she was even at the party. But that allowed all these other women to come out and said that this happened, and this happened to Me Too as well. And there were a lot of people that came out and said this happened to them, and about 90% of it was all fake. Just because women come out doesn't mean they're telling the truth. And I hope that she understands that. She probably has female friends that she would never trust anything to, because women lie like it's part of what their DNA is. So I'll just go on for that. What happens with Anthony, we don't know nothing. We have somebody that's been a jilted lover that apparently had a baby with him. And then later on, after all this issues that they've had, he said, I don't want you anymore. And now she goes to the cops. She waited a year after the first incident, and then she finally went into the cops. I have no respect for women who do this. If you're being abused, tell the authorities at the time that it happened. Sancho's statement saying he was being scapegoated. Another player issue. He said the same thing when he was at Dortmund. So this has nothing to do with being at Manchester or being at Manchester United. This is something that's a character flaw in the individual. When he doesn't feel like he's getting his credit, he says these words. He said it in Dortmund. He has a history on this. I just wish that everybody else would actually bring it out. Sometimes they do it. Sometimes on the BBC or Talk Sports, they finally bring it out. But they don't talk about the part where he said that he was being scapegoated back then. Now, apparently back then, he went back and had a huge rest of the season where he had 17 goals and 17 assists. So maybe Ken Hogg was thinking this is the way to motivate him to be a better player. He gave everything to him last season. So this is not a bad thing. It really isn't, because we know what Ten Hag and the club did for this guy. So I think that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Just because he's saying it doesn't mean anything that it's true or not. These are divas who play football. Yeah. Greenwood's situation, how awfully Richard Arnold handled it. I would ask her, what do you mean by that? They stuck behind a guy that had been at the school at the club for 15 years. They investigated it. The Crown investigated it. They found out that the audio has more information there, not the shit that you've heard on the internet. There's more that leads up to it that says that what we know isn't really the truth. I made my opinion on this. I think the reason why we don't know anything more about it is because they did not want to implicate Harriet in this situation. And Greenwood knew that what he had done is he probably had sex behind her back. She found out he did this before when he was in Iceland, but maybe before that or after that he did the same thing. And in his mind, he thinks that he's deserved the type of treatment he got because of this. The video or the audio, the photos can be altered. They can be faked. I've seen those. I've seen it before in cases where we found out that they were fake after the fact. She claims she was hacked. We don't know, but let's say that she wasn't, and she just released it because he was going to say, I didn't want to stay with it anymore. And now she had this over his head. But all I'm saying to you is that the team looked at this and the Crown looked at this, had the entire unedited audio, and said that there's more here. We don't know what it is, and that's why he has not actually been terminated from the club. That's another thing that these great reporters said this. Clearly he wasn't. He's been loaned out. He can be back in another year. The problem is that we listen to the media way too much, and we form our opinions based on what they claim. This is the same media that said that we're going to get these players in under transfers. These are the same people that wrote on this stuff about the Mason Greenwood thing. They don't know shit until the club came out and said what they said, and they actually said it like 6 months ago, and said that there's more here. And then they had to go back and say it again because all these groups came out saying there's no way he can be back in this team. After they already said that there's more in the audio, but nobody wants to listen to it. They just think that the video and the audio, the pictures means everything. And neither place is the same. And I think she might talk about it later. It's not the same. You have a player that's been here for 15 years, part of the youth setup, another player that came in. We can't verify what's going over in Brazil about certain things like this. We have to wait. You don't put him you don't hang him. This is what we used to do in the old days. The mob mentality would pick up the man and they would string it up, regardless of their race, because of what a woman said. And it happens many, many times that guys have actually been killed by the state, by the country, found out that what they were accused was not true. Women don't want to take accountability in things like this, so they blame the men all the time. I'm not saying it didn't happen with Greenwood. I'm not saying it didn't happen with I keep calling him Sancho, but Anthony. But we don't fucking know. The takeover being dragged on, creating job uncertainty for employees, and now stop and staff turning on Glazers and leaking stories. Where does she get this information from? Does she work at the club? Do you think that all the people that work in the back staff, I mean, I don't know, maybe the actually managers might get fired if a new owner comes in. It's rare to me if the Qatari place comes in, it's going to come in and just get rid of all the players in the back staff. And they're businessmen. They can do exactly what they want to do when it comes to the club. We went public years ago, and that's when the Glazers bought them. The club is probably worth a lot more than it's valued at right now in the stock market. It's probably worth around $7 billion. It probably is. We're the biggest club in the world when you took it our fan base around the world. So I have no issue here, and it's nothing against the club. Any businessman will want to get exactly what they want from the club. You can say that they haven't updated the stands or the train ground, all that stuff. That's all fair. I've been talking about that forever. They should do better there. But they spent over $1 billion. Whether or not it's on their card, they've paid over $900 million when it comes to interest payments. It's not my model. I'd rather Elon Musk came in and bought it all off. Now, most people would not want Elon Musk to do it because everybody thinks he's a Nazi because he believes in free speech. And anyway, let me just keep going on here. Oh God, did I lose it? Ronaldo goes on, Piers Morgan disrespects Ten Hag, then goes on about the blood, how club is being, okay, this is Ronaldo, the biggest narcissist in the world, a great player, a legend for our club. He didn't like what he heard from Ten Hag. You know, we ain't got him. We stopped him from going to Manchester City. Now, he probably could have went there and won the triple that year, but he didn't. I give him credit for coming, and he played here somewhat well. But there was issues with that. I understand the fact that he lost his baby. That's a big thing. But he also thought he was bigger than the club. Does anybody have a problem with at the end, how Ten Hag dealt with that? And now the fact later on, he comes back and said the club is this and this and that. You don't think that Ronaldo understands how much the fans hate the Glazers? Of course he's going to do that because he knows he feels bad because he had to leave the club. It's not the same Manchester United when he was there with Ferguson. It wasn't. And he didn't realize that. He came back and said that our facilities are so shit. Well, maybe they are. But the question is, the man was an older man. He shouldn't have acted what he did. It was all on him. Bailey comes out and says the club favors British players. This is about the stupidest thing ever. This is a guy that we all loved. One of those guys that fought for the badge, but always got injured, could not be trusted on. And then this is what players do, that when they can't be starters anymore, they blame everybody else about themselves. The fact that they were never fit to play might be more important than anything else. Just because he said that doesn't really mean anything. I'd actually have to ask him if that actually happened. Or is this just a leak story from these same reporters that continually say shit like this that are not ever proven out to be true? That's all I have to say here. Until I find an actual quote from Bailey that actually said this. And so let's just say he thought that at that time. There are a lot of guys we don't have enough British players on the team anymore, other than Rashford. What the fuck? Shaw, guys that actually played for the national team. There ain't a whole lot now in Manchester United. That's the problem with the team. We've got players that are not even close to being English, playing for the biggest team in England. That's the problem. The Premiership is so globalist now that we forget what it ties to the local community. And this is the real problem that we're having with the disconnect from the players, from the team, and from the fans, especially when you're in Manchester. They don't represent you anymore. These are mercenaries, and the play on the field is down to the coach and to the players. It has nothing to do with the manager or the Glazers. Not on the day that you're actually playing. And people they want to blame everybody else except the players. Most of this shit is about the players or the coach. But no, they want to blame Glazers and stuff. Now, that's fine. You can do that. But it's not factual. You can have the stupidest fucking coach or owners in the world, and you can still play well on the pitch. Okay, he likes a comment slamming Maguire and teammates. Obviously, back then, under Ollie, that was kind of, well, this might have been Ollie and Ten Hag after Ralph Rangnick and all that stuff. There was a lot of dissension in the team. People didn't know where they were going to go. And Ralph Rangnick came out and said very open statements about the team, saying that there's like 10 players here that are not good enough. So obviously these players felt offended by this, and they're from the new school as well. When you say something now, you get offended, and you have to tell everybody how offended you are instead of doing better and improving your game and get yourself out there. That's all I would. That's as much as you want to say about Maguire. At least Maguire says, "I'm going to stay here and fight for my place." Now you might think that his motives are different because he wants to be with Manchester United, and that's better for his brand. But he made the statement that's what he wants to do. Apparently, I don't know if that's actually from him or not. I think he actually did in his Twitter. But again, who actually does the Twitters for these players? Who knows? This is another player issue. Lingard falls out with the club over not getting a loan move, so they give him a holiday. It's like, go cool yourself and get out of here because you're not going to play anyway, and then come back and fight for your place. This is what we do now because these players are so fucking thin-skinned. They can't take any criticisms at all, and that includes Lingard. You're not in the last 30 years. Do you think that Jesse Lingard should be starting for Manchester United at any point? Even as bad as we were, would you think he's really a Manchester United first-team player? Ask yourself that. And if it's not if it's totally different to what I believe, then why are you having a problem with it? He was never that good. He's a good guy to be in the squad, but he made it, especially after the Wakanda movie came out, he made it all about that. This whole Brandon and all this, doing this shit. Okay, great. Just play better on the football field. Lingard and Martial went on social media to say Rangnick was a liar. Well, that's basically what I said before. He ruffled a lot of players there, and that's why I was fully in support of him coming in because I wanted him to do that. He did that, and I thought by now when he got rid of those players out, the fact is that this is where the one thing you could actually say that the players or the people above it signing these guys to long-term contracts with way too much money that we can't get rid of them. That is where you can have a substance debate saying that we're not well run there. And you're right. That's exactly true. Again, these are guys that are thin-skinned. Did Herrera ever do this? Maybe he did. I don't know. Who knows what would have done? If Keno would have been in that room, he probably would have stopped it. But these guys are all about themselves and their own brand. And if they feel like they've been outed, let's say, they have to go on social media just like Sancho did. Now, this is the new modern football player, and I guess we have to get used to it. As a fan for Manchester United, you don't want our team to be about that. Other players go through the same type of shit, and they go on social media. There has to be something that they go in when you actually sign the contract that says if you do this, if you go on social media and disrepute this club or anything like that, you're going to be fine and things can happen. It should be in every contract. They should have classes they go to and say this is how you actually deal with stuff. And if you have an issue, you go in and talk to the manager. And again, she goes on and talks about calls out the club saying half the club have the wrong attitude and they need to go. You know what she said about open heart surgery. Of course, he was correct. So Okay, is that a system of the bad club? Maybe it is. Maybe it's just when you're going through a transition. We were never going to be the same after Ferguson because he held the team itself to a high standard, and that's why everybody wanted Ten Hag, because we wanted that same standard. The problem is now it's 10 years later, social media, their own brands. It's very difficult for a guy that didn't come from, let's say from Real Madrid and had other 3 Champions Leagues, that he had that as part of that. But still, guys like, right away, Ronaldo disrespected Ten Hag. So, and when he does it, he's one of the greatest players of all time. What do you think the rest of the team's going to do? This is, Mike Bark talks about this, and I don't always agree with him, but there is this thing about player power when it comes to Manchester United. If you don't have the very strong coach that has that background, the players take over. And I don't know what that is. It could possibly be that the board or whatever just are chummy with these players, and they don't have a delineation between that and what's on the playing field. Again, as I said before, I don't give a shit who runs the club, other than the fact they should do best for the club as possibly. I care about what's going on the pitch. I don't care if we have guys that can't really play at the level that City does, but as long as they play as best as you can, you do what the coach asks you to do. You do his tactics, and if we lose, then it continually happens and happens and happens, and you get rid of the coach and you start over with something else. It's simply that easy. Rojo calls out Maguire and has a big bust up with Ole paying. This is a player that never gets a chance to play much. Another guy that gets hurt all the time, and I love Rojo, the type of player that we want, right? But he got hurt all the time. But he was never a better player than Maguire. People forget that Maguire had about 18 months where he was really, really good, based on the type of tactics we were at. The problem now is that he's just can't do the same thing because he's not as fast and pacey as the other players that we need. So it's not a bad thing about Maguire. It's the fact that he is not the type of player that we need in this these tactics. He can go play elsewhere, and we talked about it already. He wanted to stay here to fight for his place. Fine, he did. What did he do wrong in that game against Arsenal when he came on? I think his pass started that Garnacho pass. I think he got it into Casemiro, and Casemiro got it to Højlund, or was it the other way around? I forget. Maybe it was Bruno to Højlund, Casemiro to him. He came out and had his head out there. He wasn't in fault of any of the goals. I don't love him. I didn't like him when he was at Leicester. I thought he was kind of slow back then, but the type of play that we played, it kind of fit into what Ollie was doing. We had fast guys on the outside. Again, I don't like how we played that way. Never did. My wife sent me something. But anyway. Multiple dressing team leaks. Okay, these are the same reporters that saying all this stuff. So how do we believe any of this until the actual player comes out and says it? Martial said something on social media. You can believe that because that came from his team. Lingard said the same thing about it. That means that comes from his team. So we have leaks because everybody wants a story about Manchester United. Don't you understand this now? It's not because if we were Bournemouth, nobody would care. You don't think that there's division in especially in modern football and other clubs? It's great to see that Guardiola can hold all that, but Arteta got rid of a lot of guys, good players at Arsenal, got them out of there. Same type of shit was going on. Pep has done the same thing. He got rid of people that definitely won them the treble last year. These are good players, and they said things but because it's Manchester United, it sells papers, it's on social media. That's why. You can blame the Glazers, but they're not there, and he's not. Do you think the Glazers are leaking this shit? Do you think that Arlen is leaking this shit? Do you think Ten Hag is leaking this? I've heard this for the last 3-4 years. It says it must be Maguire that's leaking all this, or Rashford is leaking all that. That wouldn't be shocking to me because these players continually want to get their shit out there and say it's not their fault when they play 7-0, 7-0 at Anfield. So they have to do shit like this because they can't deal with the criticism that they get. And it was all started when Randa came in and said this, and they've never been able to deal with it since then. Now they have a good guy, a guy that's in there that has standards, and most of the guys can deal with it. Garnacho, the youngest guy of all of it, he almost sulked off, but he came back, he listened, and he's been playing really well. Rashford had the same type of thing. He came back, played really well for a while, then he kind of slumped at the end. I think it happens. And I think he's limited as a player. So this is not really news. It isn't. And it's not indicative because it's Manchester United. The only thing that's indicative is that it's Manchester United and everybody wants to talk about us. Martial interview slamming Ole and Jose. Well, of course, this is 4 or 5 years after the last time they won the Premiership. Everybody's going upset because we're not doing well. Martial's another guy that never has done his entire, although he's a great player in certain areas. I thought he played well against Arsenal, especially the last part. He has a lot of talent, but also another guy gets injured. And these guys, instead of looking in and look at their own self, they have to point out other shit around. I mean, Pogba did the same shit when Pogba was just running around with a head cut off. 6'4", should be dominant, does it sometimes, shows it, but the rest of the time doesn't do it, act like he doesn't care. And then you know what Pogba said, the shit that we had to deal with that. This is another leader of the team that used to play for Manchester United as a youth player. Come back, you think he's going to be a leader, and he's not. These guys, a lot of modern footballers are like this. The best thing we can do is now be more vigilant when we buy new players. Look in their background, see what their parents are like, that they understand what integrity and discipline actually means, and go from there. Personally, I would like to get all the youth team players and just continually move them up. And if we don't finish in the top 4, that's fine. We're not ever going to be relegated in my lifetime, probably. So, in order to get players that actually bleed for the club, this is how it should be done. That's how it was always done, especially after Ferguson took it over. And we had all of our success because of this. And then, obviously, we went out and bought more players, and we had more money, and other players, other teams started getting better, like Madrid after that, when they beat us, what they did. Ferguson changed his old way he played. I don't think he should have done that, but he did. And he's the greatest manager in Britain. And so, anyway. Tried to sign Arnautovic. Yeah, this whole thing about the fans came back and stopped that. Again, this is another thing that was reported in the transfer news. How close were we really close to getting him? I don't know. You can't, everything that comes out of that, you have to just look at it and say, was it actually going to ever happen? Once it's in the news and everybody says, oh my God, and he said something about this, and he's really a racist. And why? Because he's white. I mean, get the fuck out of here. People can have their opinions about stuff. I mean, all these other people do this stuff with Black Lives Matter. We have to deal with the last 2 or 3 years in the Premiership when the Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organizations run by lesbians that buy houses and doesn't give a shit about the black community at all. And you guys are still fucking kneeling and you're saying you're doing it just because it's racism. Get the fuck out of here. He's not a Manchester United type of player. He's not that. He doesn't have that ability. You know, I'm thinking that we should be at the top of the league, so we should have the best players. But the truth is, he probably could have done a job for us, and it stopped because of this bullshit. I don't think we ever were in for him. It's just that we went through a couple transfer windows that we kind of acted stupid at the end, and that is an area that you can actually criticize because we should be scouting these players and should be ready to bid early on. Now we buy players, and Ahmad being one of those, we spent a lot of money on him. Everybody thought he was a flop. Then he goes in the Champions whatever, the second, the one below the Premiership, and he had a really good year, and he will be back, and we'll see if he's good enough. But so you can be upset about stuff like that, but these are all players. And do you think that Manchester United made the players like this? If you think that's the way it is, then I don't believe that you actually believe that. These players have their own issues or their own character flaws. If you believe everything that you wrote down here, that it's true, that Anthony did this to women, that Greenwood did this to her all the time, that there's no other story here, that you believe all these other players because they were disrespected. This is another thing. This is the whole thing now. Young people, modern people, they think you have to be respected all the time. No, you have to earn where you're going to be. Standards have to be there. I realize I'm more older than most people on this thing, but that's the issue. And people just don't understand that. You have to work for everything. That's how Ronaldo became one of the greatest players of all time. The fact that he came back and said what he said, that's just him being passionate and being a narcissist. That still a great player, still great everything else, but he should have been a leader, and he failed at that. Even though a lot of players, Garnacho and Pileski loved being around him, he still had issues with the team. There was a clique in the team. And again, this is stuff that's been reported, that Ronaldo had this clique that wanted to stay and actually train, and these other players were doing what they want to do with their own brand. They want to go out and party and stuff like that. I don't know who that could be. I'm going to say probably the Marcuses and all those type of things. Luke Shaw, those guys have been there for a while. Think that they shouldn't have to change anything because they've been there for that long. Shaw had the same issue not that long ago. He was not going to be able to play under Jose. Jose had to continually change the way he played because he was so out of position. And he said that when Jose left, he said that he changed the way he played and made him a better player and dealt with his diet better and all that stuff. But anyway, we'll continue on. Luke Shaw came out and admitted a lot of Man United players were not 100% committed, 21-22. Okay. This is a guy that had the same issues with this. So this sounds like projecting from him. Maybe he changed all that after being under the tutelage of Jose Mourinho and Ralph Rangnick and Ole and all that stuff. Ole put a shoulder around him all the time to make him feel better because Jose had kind of like put him down, but actually taught him how to actually play to the position that made him one of the best players in that position in Europe. So now he feels that this is what you have to do really, really well. And then when he sees somebody else in the team not doing it, he's going to say it. Again, did he say it on social media? Did he actually tweet this out? Or is this a leak from the team or from somebody in the thing? If this is all true, then we should get rid of all of them. Just get it all and just let the youth team and the under 23 team to come up and play for the rest of the year. And then we'll go from that and see how it works. But the idea that this doesn't happen in other games, other teams, it's more magnified because it's Manchester United. And there's going to be 100 reporters outside the locker room every day at Old Trafford. There's going to be 1 or 2 at Manchester City. There's going to be 1 or 2 at Arsenal. There might be 4 at Liverpool. There's going to be 0 at Wolves, 0 at anything else. It is what it is, and we have to deal with it because we're the most successful team in England, other than for Champions Leagues. All right, we're almost done here. Lingard told Scholes, I remember this, was a mess. Oh yeah, again, this is another player that's not playing anymore. So he's gonna say, well, the entire Russian room is doing bad because we're not playing really well. And Scholes actually aired that. Well, these are guys that are not doing well and they have to blame everything else except themselves. This is the modern football. I've already said it in this video many, many times. This has nothing to do per se for the club. It's just what it is. And these are type of players that shouldn't be playing for Manchester United. And we just hope. And already, Ten Hag has already got rid of a lot of them. And there's going to be more. The problem is, and this is the area that you can actually say something about it. It's very difficult to get rid of these players. I mean, we got rid of Fred for $8 million. That's just crazy to me. But anyway, the other players have high salaries, and it's very difficult to offload them because they're just good players. They're not world class. They're just not. We don't have anybody that's really world class, unfortunately. And who cares about what happened with Greece and with Maguire? He was on vacation. I'm sure part of that's his fault. Other thing, he's a celebrity, and people like to do shit when you're a celebrity. They come at you and they fight you and shit. Okay, what does that have to do with the club? It's not. These are individual players that either made mistakes or they were the press just blew it up out of proportion, saying he's just this and that and that. Who cares? Again, I have issues with Maguire. He should have left, but he has a contract that says he needs to get that type of money from here to here. He had an agent that did that, a lawyer that did that for him. He feels that he should get exactly what we put that contract for. There's nothing wrong with that. And if he doesn't want to leave, then he stays. We allowed Phil Jones to stay there for 150,000 years. And I heard this one of the pundits in the United States said that we're trying to get Phil Jones back. Where does he get that information from? Whatever. And the final thing she talks about the Super League debacle when the Glazers and Woodward were the ringleaders behind it. Oh, really? They're businessmen. They want to make more money. I don't really blame them for that. And that's how everything's going through anyway. If you do not believe in the last 10 years we're not going to have something like this, you're fooling yourself. I'm glad that everybody came out and stopped it when it happened. We got what's going on with Saudi right now. They're buying all these players, and they want to be a force when it comes to world football, and they will be because they have the money to do it. So what do you do at that point? The Premiership will no longer be the most exclusive, well, it'd still be the most popular, probably. But why not? And I hope that a lot of North Africans and Moroccans and Saudi Arabian players get to play there, and they're at a level they can come in and play in the Champions League. But we all know that eventually we're going to come to something like that because it gives the teams more money. If you're not getting them enough money to buy for those players, I mean, it's this circle jerk that we have. We have to pay a player like $400,000 a week. How are you going to afford that if you got 10 players that are like this? And if you're not, then you got to pay. You got to pay for everything else. You got to pay more for this and this and this and this. And how are you going to pay $1 billion to retrofit the stadium? You'd want your owners to have that in them, but I'm sure they've looked at proposals to do this, but they don't have the money to do it. They're also in debt in Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I think that it's not as bad as we are in Manchester United, but similar. And this is how they do it. And they know they're going to be able to sell the club for more than they own on it. And eventually they will. I don't know when, but eventually they will. But unless the fans actually do not show up and don't buy the merchandise, they will stay at the club. And you can be upset all you want, but how do you know the next person to come in is going to be a better thing? Do you want the Qatari things to come in and they want everything to be just changed radically to their belief systems in that part of the world? That we're going to have like a mosque Wednesday, or they're all going to be. I mean, you sit there and you complain and think we don't know what's coming with them and the issues that they have. But anyway, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. I don't know, but it is what it is. It's just sports. And again, everything she talks about here is individual to individual players. Some of the thing that says that maybe Ten Hag has some blame at this, I fully support him. Let me go ahead and finish the end of this. No other top team has this drama. We only have that because people report on it. The idea that that there's not some sort of dissension in other teams around the world in the Premiership. I can tell you at the end of last year when Arsenal was just blowing the league, I believe that there probably dissension in the room when players make silly mistakes that cost them points. I think there was probably that dissension, but it didn't get reported. Now, how do we stop that? Can we stop? Can we just have no? The problem is these players will do what they want to do because they are more concerned about their own brand, not the football team. And it's very difficult to find the right player that's not going to be concerned about that. What I have not seen is that Højlund is not on Twitter. I've not seen him. And that's a good sign for me. He might be on Instagram, I don't know. But the fact that he's not on there really makes me feel well because he's the youngest guy and he's not on there, apparently. Okay, and all of them, at the end, she blames the Glazers. The club is a circus. Constantly keeping unhappy players so they don't spend more money on replacements on more. They've spent over $1 billion. The problem is, and also we had the most net spend ever. I think it was like 1.3 billion in the last 10 years, and an actual like a full billion of net spend. We got the wrong players. Now, you can blame the recruitment of that, but we spent way too much players. We should have walked away with Anthony. We should have walked away when it comes to Sancho. We should have got a lot more for Fred to spend. Fred could have went to Saudi Arabia and got more money, I would have thought. I hope that he does really well there. I hope that Greenwood lights up the La Liga. The truth is this, is that at the top 15 or 12, or let's say 7 teams, talent-wise, are probably 6th out of all of those. All our players that are really, really good that might be considered world-class, like Casemiro, are on the other side of their career. Marcus Rashford is not world-class. He's very good. He's good. He plays well in the Premiership because it's good for his style of play. I'm not sure you do the same thing in Italy. The game is totally different. The Bundesliga, it's totally different. It's like Sancho came out and played really well there. So does Mkhitaryan, played really well there. Came here, never really played as well as he did in that. It's not because the players around him were so much better. In the Premiership, it's a different level and of speed and everything else. It's just a different type of game. But anyway, we have to realize that we don't have exactly what he wants. He didn't want Casemiro. He got him anyway. He wanted Frankie de Jong. He want players that are going to be progressive and they go forward, and they have to make sure that they track back whenever they lose the ball. Out of all the teams, we've had 4. We're at 4th or 3rd or 4th when it comes to big chances created in the entire league. We only have 5 goals in 4 games. With Højlund, it's going to change just everything. If people would just relax, like Aaron Rodgers said years ago, relax. This team is going to change totally now with Højlund there. We only hope he doesn't get hurt, that he can play 35 games a year as starter, that Rashford picks up his head and passes it. I don't care who plays on the other side. I like Palestri. I think Garnacho can play out there as well. Ahmad can play out there. They can switch out back and forth. We have an absolute opportunity when we come back. If we just don't look at the shit that comes in on the media, don't follow these pundits and saying shit, and then get it in your mind that it's got to blame everybody else, that I'm not doing enough. Way too much these guys are on the internet and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, which is playing football. They should be out there doing everything they can do to be better. If Sancho wants to be the best player in the world, he should have been out there every day doing what he needs to do. The club did everything they could for that man, and then he said what he said, because all Ten Hag has said is that he wasn't selected based on the other players that were on that day during that week in training. So do better. Don't go on social media and say it. And now they're already saying they're going to do more for him because he has this issues. And there are a lot of people that would say just get rid of him because he's costing us so much money. People just get really upset about the money and all that stuff. But we all wanted him. Apparently, I was okay with him coming. We all wanted Di Maria. We all wanted Sancho. We all wanted Casemiro when he was signed. All these players we wanted. And then, is it because Manchester United changes everything? Or the fact is that we are still not in the position that we have really good players around our better players. And the fact is way too of them are individualist when they play. Other than Bruno. Bruno will try anything. Sometimes he has bad games. I love his effort, just like Herrera when he was here before. So he's really the only guy that you can actually say might be world class. But there isn't anybody else. We're just not. And we can be very good, and we can beat anybody in the world. I mean, relatively, we could beat anybody in the world on a given day, but we also could lose to everybody else in the world every day. We need to get off social media. These are all young people, and this is what they grew up on, and I understand that, and I'm glad that, young woman that's involved with football. But we got to get emotion out of it. We got to be rational about it. We got to understand that we all had the same issues about the club 4 or 5 years ago, that there were way too many individual players in there, that they didn't care about the club, and we lost that little community we had with the players. Regardless of what's happening up with the Glazers, we still loved the players. And then later on, guys like Mark Orbridge and these guys were saying that we all hated the players. I never hated them. I just wanted the effort to be better. I don't want to see them at training and they're all smiling. Or then they go out, after they lose to City, they go out and they're out partying with City players. I mean, maybe I'm old school, I don't like that. That's a bad look. If they should be out, they should be sitting there doing shit. And what I like about Ten Hag, he made them actually play in the middle of a week because we played so poorly, even though we actually beat Wolves. I think that was that year, or maybe it was after Tottenham. They actually made him come out and play play a little bit, because it looked like we weren't fit enough. I don't know if we should have went to the United States or not, but I've already been talking for 45 minutes. I want to stop right here. Tell me what you think about this in the comments, and we'll talk about there. Again, Alice, if you actually watch this, it's not about you, but you did a whole thing on social media, and somebody has to respond to it in kind. Just responding to you on Twitter or X or whatever, it's not enough. You got to understand that it's more than what you're saying. Everything you're saying might be factually true, other than the allegations with Greenwood and Anthony, and a lot of the other stuff that was supposedly reported. We don't know exactly those players actually said this. We got to focus on what we're supposed to do. What's more important is what's the play and how we play on the field. That those players are actually taking what the tactics that Ten Hag wants to have. This guy continually says they're not doing what I want them to do. Now, do you get rid of the coach, or do you get rid of the players and get the players that will actually come in and actually play the game? And if we don't, and if it's not good enough, then we get rid of him. But he's only been here a year and 2 or 3 days, 1 year and 4 games. There's way too many players out there, way too many pundits that are saying he should be gone already. This is absolutely lunacy. Again, I'm going to stop right now. You guys have a good day, and I'll talk to you later.